I never believed in bad omens, but the night my sister Emily died, everything felt wrong. Too clean, too quick, too rehearsed. The police called it a simple accident. Rain, a slippery road, a turn she didn't make. They handed us her belongings in a plastic bag, and everyone whispered the same line. She must have been distracted. But Emily wasn't the distracted type. She was stubborn, focused, the kind of person who double-checked locks and screens before sleeping. A week later, when everyone else had already accepted the story and moved on, I took her phone, not to cling to memories, but because something inside me refused to sit still. At first there was nothing unusual, photos of her dog, work notes, grocery lists. Then I opened the recently deleted folder. It was supposed to be empty. Instead, 42 files sat there, all time-stamped 2 nights before she died. I restored the first one, and my stomach turned. Someone was digging a hole in our parents' backyard in the middle of the night. The picture was grainy, but the shovel, the gloves, the boxes stacked on the grass. There was no mistaking what Emily had seen. I kept swiping. More photos. A man's silhouette. Flashlight beams. Cardboard boxes being carried out of the house. Our childhood home. By someone who clearly didn't want to be seen. And then came the photo that changed everything. A car parked near the fence, trunk open, a box shoved inside. The license plate wasn't perfectly clear, but the last 3 characters were unmistakable. T39. It was the same plate number as my cousin Derek's car. The same Derek who'd been pressuring Emily for months to sign over her portion of the house after our parents passed. The same man who kept saying we owed him because he spent years helping at the family business. When I confronted him at the funeral, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Her death is a tragedy, but maybe fate just handled things faster." I thought it was a stupid, cruel thing to say, until I saw those photos. My hands were shaking, but I kept scrolling. The final file wasn't a photo. It was a video, 6 seconds long. Emily was breathing hard, whispering into the phone. "If something happens to me, check the backyard." It's not what they say. And then a noise, someone shouting her name, footsteps running toward her, before the video cut abruptly. I went to the police the next morning, showed them everything. They barely looked at the phone. The detective sighed, wrote a note, and told me photos could be doctored, that Emily was probably paranoid, emotional, grieving our parents, seeing threats where there were none. Case closed, files locked, accident confirmed. But I'm not done. I went back to the house myself. The yard was spotless, like someone had manicured every blade of grass. But there was a patch near the fence that looked different, soil too soft, ground too smooth. I pressed my shoe into it, and it sank. Someone had filled it recently. My cousin's car passed by the house that night, slow, crawling, lights off. He didn't stop, but he wanted me to see him, wanted me to know I was being watched. Emily once told me, "Secrets don't bury themselves, they get buried by someone." Now I can't sleep. I keep the phone charged beside me, her photos backed up in 3 places, the video hidden where no one will erase it. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. And if she was brave enough to record what she saw, I have to be brave enough to finish what she started. I don't know what's under that soil yet, but I'm going to find out. Even if the people who put it there think they already buried the truth with her. I didn't tell anyone I was going back to the house again, not even my girlfriend, because the moment you say something out loud, it becomes evidence, and evidence has a way of disappearing in this family. I waited until midnight, parked 2 blocks away, and walked the rest of the way with a small garden shovel and a flashlight tucked under my jacket. The neighborhood was silent, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like footsteps behind you. Our parents' house looked exactly as it used to. White porch, broken wind chimes, the upstairs light that Emily always forgot to turn off. But now it felt hostile, like the walls knew what I came to do. I slipped into the backyard and went straight to the soft patch of soil, the same one the police didn't even bother to inspect. The dirt gave way too easily under the shovel. Someone had dug here recently, filled it sloppy, covered it fast. I got about a foot down before I hit the edge of something solid, cardboard. I felt my hands shaking so hard, I almost dropped the shovel. I clawed the last layer of dirt away until I could see it properly. A box taped shut, water-stained but intact. I pulled it out as quietly as I could, though every sound felt like thunder in the dead of night. The moment I opened it, I understood why Emily died. Inside were papers, stacks and stacks of them. Bank statements with unfamiliar names, forged signatures, property transfer drafts, and envelopes of cash. Someone, no, several someones, had been moving money in and out of accounts connected to our family home. There were photocopies of our parents' wills, not the real ones, but edited versions with different beneficiaries. Derek's name was underlined on every forged page. This wasn't just greed, it was organized, planned, years in the making. I didn't realize I was crying until the papers blurred in my sight. Emily found this. Emily confronted them. And Emily ended up dead on a road she drove every day for 10 years. I shoved everything back in the box, taped it shut with the same dirt-stained tape, and carried it to my car. But when I stepped onto the street, I saw headlights, slow, creeping, high beams off. The car was black, the windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but the shape of the grille was familiar. Derek drove the exact same model. I froze. The car rolled forward another few feet, then stopped. We stared at each other through the darkness, me clutching the box like a life vest, them waiting for me to panic. I heard Emily's whisper from the video in my head. If something happens to me, I force myself to walk, not run, not tremble, just walk to my car, unlock it, and get inside. The other vehicle didn't move until I turned the engine on. Then it backed away slowly and disappeared. They weren't stopping me tonight. They were warning me. I spent the next day scanning every page, photographing everything, uploading copies to cloud storage with hidden file names. I emailed a set to a lawyer I found 2 towns over, someone with no connection to my family, someone who couldn't be bought. I expected relief. Instead, I felt hunted. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time a car slowed near my building, I froze. That night, someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks. I didn't answer, but a voice spoke through the wood, male, calm, familiar. You don't know what you're playing with. Walk away. No threats, no yelling, just a statement. And then footsteps fading down the hall. I called the lawyer an hour later. His voice was tight, nervous. He told me the case was complicated and that he needed more time. But he also asked a strange question. Does anyone else know you sent me these files? That's when I understood. I couldn't trust anyone except Emily's phone, the documents, and myself. I started writing everything down. Dates, names, conversations, who was near the house, who parked outside my building, who called suddenly out of the blue. Every detail went into a notebook hidden under my mattress. Emily didn't die for nothing. She tried to warn me, tried to leave breadcrumbs. Now I was following them, and I had no idea where they ended, but someone else did, and they wanted me to stop before I arrived. I didn't sleep the night after the lawyer called, because every sound felt like a warning, every shadow moved wrong, every passing car slowed just a little too much outside my window, and by morning I realized something terrifying. The people who wanted Emily gone weren't afraid of the police, the courts, or consequences. They were only afraid of exposure, and the only person who could expose them now was me. I decided to visit Derek, not because I trusted him, but because I needed to see his face, needed to hear his lies with my own ears, needed to know if he felt even a flicker of guilt. I drove to his house halfway across town, rehearsing what I would say, how I would pretend I knew less than I really did, how I'd see if he flinched when I mentioned the documents Emily photographed. But when I pulled up his driveway, something was wrong. The front door was open, the screen torn, a mug shattered on the porch, as if someone left in a hurry or was taken. I stepped inside, calling his name, and the silence inside the house made my skin crawl. It wasn't ransacked, not exactly, but the drawers were open, papers scattered, the living room lamp knocked over. Derek was gone, and the place looked like someone had searched through it fast, knowing exactly what they were looking for. I should have walked out and called the cops, but the cops closed my sister's case in a day without even checking her phone, so instead I kept searching until I reached his office. His laptop was gone, his safe was open, empty, and a picture frame lay face down on the carpet. When I lifted it, there was no family photo inside, just a black USB taped behind the glass. I took it, pocketed it, and that's when I heard a sound, a faint creak, like a footstep on the back porch. I didn't breathe, didn't move, just listened. Another step. Someone was here. I slipped out through the front, moving as quickly and quietly as I could, got into my car, and drove without looking back. I didn't stop until I reached a crowded parking lot near a gas station, where I sat trembling behind the wheel, and finally pulled the USB from my pocket. I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting a virus, half expecting nothing at all, but instead there were 4 folders: payments, transfers, recordings, and one labeled simply with my sister's name. I clicked hers first. Inside were her notes, scanned pages of financial transactions, screenshots of threatening messages from unknown numbers, and one video file. My hands were shaking when I played it. The footage was dark, recorded in a car, but Emily's voice was clear, panicked, breathing fast. If you're watching this, they know I found the papers. I tried to confront them, but they weren't surprised. They told me I was digging where I shouldn't, and if I kept going, they'd make sure I ended up like Dad. My entire body went cold. Dad's death was supposed to be a heart attack, a tragedy, but normal. Except after that, Derek suddenly took over the estate paperwork, arranged the funeral, handled the will, did everything so quickly none of us even questioned it. Emily's whisper cracked in the video. It's not just them. There are lawyers, bankers, someone at the clinic, someone in the courthouse. They aren't working alone. She paused, breathing hard. If something happens to me, look for the transfers. They're laundering everything through the house. The video cut there, abruptly, like she stopped recording because someone showed up. I sat frozen, the laptop warm on my knees, reality crashing in all at once. Derek wasn't the mastermind. He was the messenger, the errand boy, the one they could afford to lose. And now he was gone too. I backed up the USB, uploaded it, emailed copies to the same out-of-town lawyer along with a message. If I disappear, release everything. When I looked up from my screen, a man in a gray coat was standing near the edge of the lot, staring at my car. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. Maybe I was paranoid, maybe not, but I turned the key and drove away before he could come closer. On the road, every car behind me felt like a threat. Every turn felt like someone was following, and finally, out of sheer instinct, I drove to the police station, not because I trusted them, but because I needed the timestamp on the surveillance cameras, proof that I was alive, proof that I was trying to report something. I walked up to the front desk and told the officer on duty that I had evidence about my sister's death. He looked bored until I mentioned forged documents, money laundering, and intentional homicide. Then his eyes flicked up, sharp, calculating, but not in a way that made me feel safe. He asked too many questions about what I thought I had, and whether I had shared it with anyone else. And that was the moment I realized Emily was right. Someone inside the system was helping cover this up. I thanked him, pretended to feel reassured, and walked out. I didn't go home. Home wasn't safe anymore. Instead, I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town, paid cash, and locked the door behind me. The USB sat on the nightstand like a ticking bomb. I kept thinking of Emily's last words on the phone before she died. If something happens to me, not if I die, not if there's an accident. If something happens, she knew. She tried to survive. So will I? Because now I'm not just grieving. I'm fighting. And whoever came for her is going to find out I don't scare as easily as they think. I knew calling the police again would be pointless, or worse, dangerous. So I spent the next hours in the dark of my apartment, sealing curtains, pacing from wall to wall, replaying the voices in that recording until every syllable was carved into my skull. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. iCloud login from a new device. A device name I didn't recognize. Someone was in her account. Someone was looking for the same thing I had. My hands shook so violently I dropped the phone, and when I picked it up, another notification popped up. Recently deleted items permanently removed. They were clearing the evidence in real time. My chest locked, but I had been smarter. I'd already copied everything to an encrypted drive and mailed it to a friend out of state. If they wanted to erase the truth, they'd be too late. At dawn, I drove to my parents' old house, telling myself that I just needed to see the place again. But really, I was looking for that cellar door, the one in the photos. Except when I got there, the backyard was freshly covered in sod, green and perfect as if nothing had ever been dug up. No mud, no seams, not even the faintest sign of disturbance. That was impossible. Grass doesn't grow overnight. Someone had been here. Recently, I started searching the yard anyway, tearing up pieces of turf with my bare hands until the blades cut into my skin. I found a corner where the ground dipped slightly, softer than the rest. And when I pressed harder, my fingers sank into loose soil. My breath stopped. I dug like a madman, and a few inches down, what appeared. A panel. A door. I pulled until my nails bent, until the dirty hinges groaned, and something underneath gave way, and then I heard tires on gravel. A car. I froze. Footsteps approached fast. Someone shouted my name, and before I could even stand, two hands grabbed my jacket and yanked me back. I spun, ready to attack, but it wasn't who I expected. It was her ex-boyfriend, the one everyone said had been devastated by her death. He looked exhausted, dirty, terrified. "They're coming back," he whispered, voice cracking. "You can't be here." He said he'd been watching the house for days, ever since he found messages from her that she'd never sent. Drafts. Unsent. All hinting that she'd discovered something wrong with the inheritance papers, that someone was forging signatures and hiding documents. And then there were the pictures, someone digging, hauling boxes, burning files. He said he'd tried to go to the police, but after that, his apartment got broken into, his car followed, his phone wiped. He grabbed my arm and practically dragged me away from the half-open cellar door just as another car approached, slow, deliberate, headlights off, crawling down the road. He pulled me behind the garage, and we watched as a black SUV stopped exactly where I had been digging. Two men stepped out. Not cops. Not family. Suits. Gloves. They never looked around. They just went straight to the door and disappeared inside, as if they knew exactly what was there. My pulse throbbed in my temples. So my sister really had uncovered something, and someone had silenced her for it. Her ex whispered. She told me once, if anything happened to her, don't trust anyone in the family. I wanted to break, to scream, to tear the grass apart and drag the truth out myself. Instead, we crawled back to my car and left without headlights, without speaking, hearts banging louder than the engine. In a gas station parking lot 20 miles away, I finally asked the only question that mattered. What was in the cellar? He stared at me with eyes too hollow for someone who should have been sleeping, eating, living. Evidence, he said. Documents. Proof they'd been stealing for years. Forging wills. Signing over property from elderly relatives before they died. My mind spun. Faces, memories, holidays, handshakes that suddenly felt like traps. And then he said it. The words I hadn't allowed myself to think. She wasn't supposed to survive the crash. The temperature inside the car felt like ice. He said he'd overheard the lawyers panicking that night after she died, talking about signatures she managed to photograph, people she threatened to expose. They thought wiping her phone was enough. They didn't know the photos were backed up. And now those men in the SUV were collecting the physical originals from the cellar, destroying the last pieces of proof. I looked at him, wondering why he was helping me, why he hadn't run far away. He shook his head. Someone has to finish what she started. A siren wailed in the distance, and he flinched hard, like a hunted animal. I started the engine, palms slick on the wheel. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know who to trust. But we knew one thing. They realized I had copies. And once they were done with the cellar, they'd come for me. We didn't make it far before my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. No name, no introduction, just a single line. Bring the drive back. We can still fix this. My blood froze. No one should have known about the drive. No one except the friend I'd mailed it to, and the friend wasn't answering calls anymore. The ex-boyfriend, Evan, told me to pull over behind a closed hardware store where we could see if anyone was following. We waited, engines off, breath shallow, watching headlights crawl past on the empty highway. I felt like the world had stretched itself thin around us, darkness like wet cloth pressed against the windows. The message came again, this time with a photo attachment. My apartment door, splintered open, everything inside turned over and gutted. They'd been there. They were still there. Evan whispered, "We need to disappear. Tonight." But I couldn't stop thinking about my sister. How close she'd come to exposing them. How terrified she must have been when she realized what they would do. Running felt like betrayal. Still, I kept driving. Small roads, back routes, gas stations with dead fluorescent lights. At a truck stop 50 miles out, I went inside to buy burner phones while Evan wiped the car clean of anything traceable. When I walked back outside, two men in the lot were staring at our car, too still, too focused. I dropped the phones and sprinted as they started walking toward Evan, and for a second, I thought they'd grab him, shove him into their van, make him vanish like they'd made her disappear. I got behind the wheel and slammed it into reverse, horn blaring. The men didn't run. They just stepped back, staring, memorizing the plates, the dent near the bumper, my face. We peeled out onto the highway and didn't slow down for 15 minutes. I felt a panic rising in my throat, like hands tightening around my windpipe. At a deserted rest area, Evan said we should get rid of the car and head somewhere rural, someplace they wouldn't be watching. But the more we talked, the more a different idea solidified inside me. If we kept running, they'd find us eventually. If we went to the police, they'd bury it. If we tried to release the photos ourselves, no one would believe two grieving relatives over wealthy people with lawyers. There was only one option left: confront the last person my sister had tried to warn. The lawyer she'd emailed, one she trusted enough to send her evidence to. Evan thought I was insane, but he came. We left the car at a truck depot, walked half a mile through fields until we reached the edge of town, and broke into a backyard just to keep out of sight. The lawyer lived in a 2-story house with warm lights and soft curtains, like a place untouched by fear. I knocked. No answer. Evan checked the windows while I rang again, harder, until the curtains shifted and a terrified face appeared. She recognized me. She let us in, locking every bolt behind us. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and her shaking breath. When I told her my sister was dead, she collapsed against the counter, sobbing into her hands. She said my sister had come to her a week before the accident, begging her to file a report that would expose several members of our own family: fraud, coercion, forged wills, stolen assets, threats. But before the lawyer could act, she'd been warned to stay out of family business. That same night, someone broke into her office and stole every document my sister left. She wanted to go to the police, but she was scared. She had children, a husband, a life they could pull apart. Evan slammed his fist on the table, saying we had copies, proof, everything they couldn't destroy. But the lawyer stared at us with horror. "If you do this," she whispered, "they won't stop. They won't lose." Then she said something I'll never forget. She wasn't the first to die for challenging them. There were others, relatives who'd had accidents, sudden strokes, unexplained fires. And now the men hunting us were cleaning up the last of the evidence. My stomach twisted with nausea. Evan asked if she could help us leak the files anonymously: news outlets, investigators, someone outside our state. The lawyer hesitated, trembling, then nodded once, sharp and terrified, as if she'd been waiting for someone else to push her. We were about to move to her office computer when headlights swept across the living room wall, 2 cars stopping outside. Footsteps, doors closing. The lawyer stared at us, pale as paper. "They found you," she mouthed. Evan killed the lights. I grabbed the hard drive from my bag. We had seconds, maybe less, and somewhere outside, engines idled in the dark, waiting. The hallway was so dark I could hear my heartbeat louder than my footsteps, every tiny sound exploding through the house like gunfire. And when the first knock hit the front door, slow, deliberate, patient, the lawyer's knees gave out, and she slid to the floor, covering her mouth to muffle a scream. Evan dragged her toward the back, whispering for her to stay quiet, but I couldn't move. I kept staring at the front door because something inside me snapped. Terror burned itself into anger, and anger turned into something sharper, meaner, more dangerous. They killed my sister. They broke into my home. They chased us across counties like animals to be put down. I wasn't running anymore. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched. I thought maybe they'd left, until the second knock came at the back door. Then another at the side of the house. They were surrounding us. I grabbed the lawyer's laptop and yanked the couch against the front door while Evan barricaded the kitchen entrance with a bookshelf. The lawyer's hands shook too much to type, so I took over, plugged in the drive, opened the files, dragged every photo, every message, every timestamp into email drafts addressed to reporters, detectives, investigators, online platforms, everything at once. Evan crouched by the window, whispering updates. For men, black clothes, no headlights, scanning the house. One moved to cut the power. The lights flickered, died, and we were swallowed in thick, suffocating black. I kept typing anyway. The glow of the laptop the only light in the house. Send, 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 send. Every email, every attachment, every backup. I didn't know how long before they breached a door. I didn't know if anyone would hear us. But at least the truth was leaving this room, scattering across the internet like gunpowder sparks. Then glass shattered in the laundry room. Footsteps. Fast, heavy, certain. Evan grabbed a kitchen knife. I grabbed the phone to call 911. And even though I knew police in our town answered to the same people hunting us, I screamed into the receiver until my voice tore. The lawyer curled into the corner, sobbing, whispering prayers. A figure stepped into the hallway, but before he could move toward us, red and blue lights exploded outside the windows, sirens tearing through the night like a blade. The men ran. 2 jumped the fence, another dove into a car, another disappeared behind the trees. Police pounded on the front door, yelling commands. I didn't know whether they'd help us or hand us over, but I opened the door anyway, because at least someone else had seen the scene, the broken window, the blood on the floor, the footprints in the mud. By morning, the story had already started to spread. The photos leaked online. News reporters called. The lawyer went on record with everything my sister told her. The investigation reopened, not by local police, but by state authorities who didn't owe my family anything. Arrests started within a week. One relative fled the country. Another confessed to being paid to stalk my sister. Journalists dug deeper and uncovered a decade of falsified medical papers, hidden assets, forged wills, threats, accidents that didn't look like accidents anymore. But none of it made me feel like justice. Justice would have meant my sister walking toward me with her stupid, crooked smile, telling me I was being dramatic, calling me paranoid. Justice would have meant she lived long enough to see them fall. Every morning I wake up knowing she died alone, scared, trying to protect us. But I also know this. Nothing she found stayed buried. The world saw her proof. The world believed her. And every time another headline appears, another arrest, another confession, I whisper to her picture on my desk, "You weren't wrong. You weren't crazy. I didn't let them erase you." Sometimes justice doesn't look like victory. Sometimes it just looks like truth that refuses to die.